As we continue our Division I college baseball preview around the state of North Carolina, Bubba, next up is let's go to Winston-Salem.
Absolutely. I'm very excited to talk about what is a very talented Wake Forest Demon Deacon Ball Club entering the 2021 season. And to do that, welcome in from the ACC network, their analyst, Lary Sorenson. Larry, how are you?
I'm doing great, thank you, and can't wait for baseball.
It's hard to believe it's a handful of days away, Larry, with the season last year cut so short. I think there are a lot of college baseball fans that are chomping at the bit. We wish it was this weekend that it started.
Well, it's snowing a little bit over here right now, so we can hold off another week and hope for some warm weather. But, last year was just such an odd year, and I think it really makes this year have a lot of question marks about it. And it's going to be exciting. It's going to be interesting. Going to be a lot of great teams around the country. I think maybe as solid as baseball has been for a long time.
No question. As far as Wake Forest is concerned, I'm hearing really good things about your ball club. And I tell you what, we had Mike Rooney on from D1 Baseball and ESPN. He talked highly of Wake Forest, and also the fact that he's saying the ACC could have Larry 11 bids this year.
Yeah, it's very, very strong. Always a great conference, obviously, and Wake Forest has been picked fifth in their division, which I think is a little bit low personally. But I think what's happened is the fact that there was only 5 rounds of the draft last year, and so many teams expected so many guys to go. They got the free year of eligibility. Everybody's coming back, has made teams so very, very strong. And we're going to see a lot of depth on a lot of clubs. I think it's going to make for a mess a year or two from now. But as they try to figure out their money situation and eligibility situations, building a ball club has been very, very difficult for the coaches. They've had to do everything on the fly. But there's going to be some great teams, especially in the ACC.
Larry, taking a look at this Wake Forest program, it's hard to believe. Year 12 for Tom Walter. He's one of the longest tenured coaches in the state of North Carolina. So just talk about where this Wake Forest program has been and where it's come in the last few years.
Well, this will be my 8th year covering Wake Forest. I started in 2014. And I think that the one thing about Tom Walter is quality individual. He's a guy, and I think you have to look no further than the situation with one of his players, Kevin Jordan, who Tom donated a kidney to before Kevin Jordan ever played an inning for him. He was a young man that was coming as a highly recruited player, had some problems with his body, and they found out that he needed a new kidney. And before he ever stepped on campus, Tom Walter donated a kidney to him. So he's a caring man about his players. It's a developmental program, so they know that they don't always get the biggest stars, although that's changing some because of the way they've approached it. They have the what was ranked the #1 pitching laboratory in the ACC and the 4th best pitching laboratory in the country. So they're getting quality arms. Tom said the other day that they have 11 guys that have registered 95 or better since the fall campaign started. So they've got some guys that throw gas, but they're still, they're not one of the elite power programs yet. So there's still some developmental work to be done, and that's the way they approach it.
Larry, Cliff Godwin has a reputation in East Carolina as being one of the hardest recruiters out there in terms of going after players and recruiting. But giving a player a kidney, that takes it to a whole nother level. Cliff's got to step up his game.
Say that.
Does that count as much as having a 38-inch locker space as opposed to a 36-inch locker space when the kids are looking at facilities and everything?
We need to check with NCAA. Is that a recruiting violation to give a kidney? Next Bubba's going to be given an arm, Larry, when he coaches.
Well, those coaches will do anything to find an edge, but it speaks to the character of the guy, and obviously a tremendous academic school as well. I kind of ended up in Winston-Salem because my sister was the vice provost at the university, and I went down to visit in January, and people were out playing golf in the 72-degree weather. I went back to Grand Rapids, and you couldn't see the fire hydrants without the stick that they put in to show where it was because the snow was so deep. So about 30 days later, I was living in Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
Yeah, and you take a look at Tom Walter. I mean, obviously he's been in Winston-Salem for over a decade now, like I just mentioned. But prior to Wake Forest, he'd done a tremendous job at New Orleans for 5 years, and then prior to that, George Washington. Not exactly somewhere that you would think of as a tremendous baseball opportunity.
No, he's such a sincere person, and he guarantees parents that he'll take care of their kids, and he does, and so they feel comfortable sending them there. Their kids graduate, their graduation rate is over the roof, and parents know that their kids are going to be well taken care of. And now they've gotten so many guys into the professional ranks the last few years that it's become a really, really attractive program to go to.
Tom, you said this was, or Larry, I'm sorry, you said that you've been covering Wake Forest since 2014. You're with the ACC network now as their analyst for Wake Forest baseball. Is this just the second year, or is this the first year that the ACC network has carried baseball? Because I know the network hasn't been in existence long.
Well, it's the first year. Last year they were going to do some games, and actually my first game that I was scheduled to do, I was up at Virginia Tech, and it got snowed out. And fortunately I was already on site, got paid anyway, but so everything got turned around. And they have the ACC network extra also, where the games are streamed, so we'll do a lot of those, and I'll do the majority of the games there, and then some spot games for the ACC network.
What do you think about the exposure there for not just Wake Forest, but you got the ACC network now covering college baseball, SEC network covering college baseball. We're based out of Greenville, so East Carolina. And now the American, their baseball games have been picked up by ESPN Plus. You used to, for college baseball, you'd have a handful of games on TV, Fox Sports South, et cetera. And, besides that, they were mainly just streamed by the school's website. Do you think with all the added exposure, college baseball could continue its popularity growth?
Oh, I think there's no question about it. And the other thing that really helps is we're seeing so many guys in the game that are going right from college to a small amount of time in the minor leagues, then into the major leagues, that people are starting to follow deeper and pay more attention to the college game, if anything. I was fortunate. I came out of the University of Michigan and was signed after my junior year, was in the big leagues the following year in the summertime. And so a year in the minor leagues. And after my career was over, I went right into broadcasting, and I did the College World Series for 3 years for ESPN. So I've been a huge fan of the college program and of the College World Series and everything that goes with it. It's the most exciting event I've ever been to. And I've been to World Series and I've been to All-Star games, and it's the most exciting week. The events themselves are just great. Everybody should go if they get a chance to.
Yeah.
We will when East Carolina makes it for sure. But
Hey,
we're talking.
East Carolina is not far away. East Carolina's got a terrific program. A lot of respect down there.
I've already told Bubba that if I have to commute with them and carpool with them, I'll be on the top of the station wagon like Aunt Edna. I mean, it's fine with me. If the Rosenbaums will take me, I'll help them with gas money. Larry, let's talk about you being a former pitcher and with Wake Forest being deep. What are your expectations from your vantage point of an analyst? What do you think this year for starting out with pitching for Wake Forest?
Well, anytime you can start your Friday night off with a guy that's expected to be a first-round draft pick, you're in pretty good shape. And Ryan Cusick is a young man that, as a high school senior, was throwing in the high 90s. They had him up to 97 as a senior in high school. He's got the perfect frame. You saw him as a freshman, and he was very slender. And I was kidding with him the last fall. I said, it used to be that I'd walk up to you and feel like I could put my fist through your chest pretty easily. And I said, now I look at you, and he's worked extremely hard at the conditioning. He's got the big lanky frame, perfect pitcher's body. He's got 3 quality pitches and legitimate first-round draft pick prospect. So that's a good way to start your Friday nights off with. Tom Walter has an unusual theory, and John Hendricks is pitching coach, in that when guys get close to their draft years, they don't like to use them out of the bullpen as much, because they feel like it's the best exposure they can give a kid is to give him the innings to throw in front of professional scouts. So Antonio Menendez came out of the bullpen, and William Fleming did a year as a closer for Wake Forest, but they in all likelihood will be the number 2 and 3 starters, but they're going to be starting because while they might be extremely valuable as a closer, developmentally for a kid's pro career, they feel like this is the best route to go. And again, a tip of the hat to it. maybe not help our program more to use you out of the bullpen, but we're going to give you the best opportunity to shine and star. And we think we can do that as a starter. So they're going to have younger people in the closing roles. But again, I mentioned the 11 guys over 95. They've got some guys that can bring it out of there. It's just a matter of locating it.
So taking a look, talk about what do the Deacons have in relief?
Well, I think that probably the guy that is going to start out for them as their closer is going to be Shane Smith, who was a kid that did a great job for him last year. I think he was 2-0 and was outstanding coming out of the bullpen. High strikeout rates, quality arm. They've got some freshman arms that they're trying to keep secret, but they won't be secret for very long because the first week of conference play is the second week of the season. One of the things that I believe is going to hurt the bullpen a little bit is the fact that they're not going to have the chance to play the non-conference games. Ordinarily, you get those, 12 to 14 games that you can play, and they're going to have some younger people that are going to be thrown into roles immediately in the conference, and you're going to sink or swim just a little bit early on, especially. But when the talent's there, then you've got a chance to come around a little bit quicker. So I've got great confidence in some young guys, but I think Smith will be the guy. He had a good summer last year, and will be the guy on the back end of things.
Larry, you mentioned going into conference play second week of the year and lack of non-conference games. What is the ACC doing this year in terms of scheduling?
Well, basically, you're going to be allowed to play, I think 50 games was the number that they assigned to everybody. And I believe six non-conference games. So you're going to be jamming everything in, and it's going to be pretty unusual for the early start is going to be the biggest thing because the conference is going to start on that second weekend, as we said. And watching that scramble with all those power clubs, and Wake Forest has a tough schedule this year. Most of the good teams that they play are going to be on the road, and I think that could hurt them a little bit in the long run. But it's just going to be, again, I was talking with one of the coaches the other day, and I happen to also broadcast football with Stan Cotton, who has been doing the play-by-play at Wake Forest for 25 years, and we just finished our fourth year doing football. And the big thing that we found out in football was that phone call could come anytime that completely turns your world upside down. You could be traveling to a game, and they call and say, we had a positive test, and turn the bus around. And so as I think all the coaches are realizing, the teams that adapt best are going to be the teams that are successful. The teams that can play in cold weather and not make it a big deal. The teams that can lose a star player and not make it a big deal. The teams that can maybe see two guys taken out by the COVID testing are going to be the teams that are successful. How do you handle that adversity is really going to be the big deal this year.
Yeah, no doubt. And I would imagine things like pitching depth are going to come into play potentially with positive COVID tests and such. And you made going back to the scheduling thing, you said only 6 non-conference games, if I heard you right. I believe the Big Ten's playing no non-conference games. Everybody's doing things kind of different. That's going to make things very hard on the selection committee come NCAA tournament time with the lack of non-conference games.
Well, with the lack of non-conference games and with the different amount of games that teams are going to play. And I think we saw that come into play some with the college football playoff. And I think in baseball, it may be even more of a factor. The fact that you can play more games helps. The fact that you don't know if you're going to get them in or not, you might lose a whole weekend is going to be a big difference. So you're exactly right. And I don't know if you've ever been around when they have that selection committee weekend, but it's wild. It's wild. Tim Brando and I did the very first 2 college selection shows that ESPN had. And so we used to hang around outside this big meeting room at a hotel, and we had, 6x8 index cards with information about teams and literally trying to corner guys to see what was going on. And it's a wild time. It's a scramble, and it's going to be even more unusual than ever this year.
Yeah, you mentioned Tim Brando, nothing to do with anything we're talking about, but we are all 3 huge Tim Brando fans here on the podcast. He's been on the podcast, and need more guys like him in the national media nowadays, in my opinion.
Jimmy B is a beauty. He was a lot of fun to work with. His golf game is much better now than it was when we played, because I used to get into his pocket a little bit when we played back in the day, and he's worked at it much harder than I have here the last few years.
Hey, Larry, I had a quick question as far as your alma mater with Michigan basketball. I mean, dealing with unbelievable COVID stuff. I think it's another week or so before they play another game, and they're number 4 in the country. I mean, a top 5 program. It's just crazy with the job that's been done up there, and I can't believe all that's going on for them.
Yeah, and that was kind of a weird story too. They had a female athlete that was over in the UK and came back, and she had tested negative before she came back, but tested positive when she got back. And so the health department actually got through to the university, and they were putting out in public that if you were at a Myers shopping store or at another store that she had been to during a certain time, you should go get yourself tested, because it was that new strain of the virus that is out there now. And so they were putting a public notice out there to go ahead and get yourself tested if you were one of the locations she was at the same time. So kind of a sad thing, and it shut things down, but the university immediately shut every program down. And you look at their baseball program, and you don't get that team practice for a couple of weeks in an important developmental time like now. And even though you still might be going in to get your swings and everything else on your own, it's just different. Anytime you throw somebody out of their rhythm, especially in baseball that is so regimented as far as what you're going to do every day, anytime you change that schedule a little bit, it makes things different.
Speaking of COVID-related items, what's the situation with Wake Forest in terms of fan attendance at the stadium? I'm assuming it's the same as East Carolina, which is virtually nobody, just parents.
My understanding is two family per game for the players. And, that's going to be kind of an oddity, kind of like playing in a B game in spring training, out on the back fields a little bit. But football was different too. They had I think 7% they allowed of the fans into the Wake Forest games, which was about 2,000 people. But baseball, it's going to be, to my understanding, 2 tickets per player per game. And that's the extent of it.
And not to get off on a tangent here, but you could sit outside, put on a mask, social distance, and we could get 500 people or so safely in these baseball stadiums. I think it would be nice. You could get 500 people in there. That's enough to make some noise for the players.
Well, Kyle, we'll let you lead that charge, and we'll be right behind you, okay?
That sounds good to me.
You go fight the governor on that one.
Yeah.
I'll do it. I'll do it.
Now, Larry, before we talk about the potent Wake Forest lineup that we were discussing pre-show, I know the schedule came out about a month or so ago now, and in preparation for this interview, I saw a comment that Coach Walter had made, which wasn't surprising, just talking about playing more ACC games, that this is far and away the most competitive schedule that there has been at Wake Forest since he's been there. And the good news is that we have a veteran club who he feels like is ready for the challenge.
It's all about your leadership from inside your team. The coach can lead as much as he possibly can, and he can say all the right things, but you've got to have the players buy into it. And the way the players really buy into it is they look at their peers. Those freshmen are checking out the juniors and seniors. What are those guys doing? And again, kidding with the coach the other day, I said, baseball players have always been known to make sound, extremely good, rational decisions with their off-field time and everything else. A sport where you're out of school, really, when you play a significant portion of your schedule. When I was in school, my entire team lived in a fraternity house, and we practiced baseball in the morning and played golf in the afternoon, and that was all we had to do. And that's still the way it is in a lot of places. So there's a lot of free time. It's going to come down to a lot of personal responsibility. And so you hope as a coach that you've chosen good quality kids and that you've chosen responsible citizens that are going to go out there and do the right thing. But man, you tell somebody that we'd rather you didn't see your girlfriend for 2 months, and that's a pretty tough thing.
Yeah, no doubt. I made the joke back during football season that if I was Mike Houston in East Carolina, I would demand all the girlfriends get tested along with the players.
Well, there's a lot of validity to that. And Tom Walters said the other day in his press conference, he said, I'm not going to tell a kid that you can't hug your mom when you see her, but feel free to jump right back to 6 feet after that, so
Well,
we all just have to adjust, and that's just the way it is. That's the way life is right now, and we just have to make good, sound decisions. A lot of it will be, how much is a player, and I think one of the things that Wake Forest has going for it is they're going to have a large number of kids that are going to be draft eligible and available and want to go on to play pro ball, and that's a goal at Wake Forest now and talked about openly. And in order to do that, you got to play, and you didn't get to play last year. So you better take advantage of this year. And if you miss a couple of weeks because you were doing dumb things, that's going to hurt you.
And Larry, the very fact, I think one thing that needs to be done is all college kids need to be moved on up and let everybody have go ahead and give everybody a shot that's playing. I mean, it's ridiculous with coaches, everybody, because let's face it, the college kids are living close together. And even if they do the right thing, all it takes is one person, and it can spread to everybody.
Yeah, and that's really what happened a lot in football, especially because you had guys that were sharing suites at schools, and they had 8 guys in a suite, and one guy got it, and so contact tracing takes out your entire defensive backfield. So you found people going to single rooms. You found coaches saying, "Okay, I'm going to put my defensive back with my offensive lineman, so that I, don't hurt multiple positions. I know you want to room with your buddy, but you're going to room with this guy so that we don't take an entire spot, an entire position out with one sick room."
Now, Larry, taking a look at this Wake Forest lineup, the amount of production and power that returns, you have guys like Seymour and Lanzilli that batted well over 300, 10 to 15 home runs. And these numbers are, of course, from 2019 and the last full season that was played. Seymour drove in 92 runs and Lanzilli 67. That's just unbelievable in a college schedule.
Yeah, the year that Bobby Seymour had when he was the conference player of the year was just amazing. I've never seen anybody, I don't think, produce so consistently. 92 RBIs in a college season is just incredible. And I talked to Buster Posey, whose record he was making a run at, and Buster had been following it too. And he said, I didn't know what I was doing. He said, every time I swung the bat, somebody scored. And I said, well, you were getting the hits too. And he said, yeah, but it just takes a phenomenal amount of luck, but also the talent. And Bobby Seymour is a guy that's a great gap hitter, especially to the opposite field. So when he's going to left center field and driving the ball, he's extremely successful. And he's a big guy, so he's going to hit his home runs. He's 6'5". He was 240, 250. He's slimmed down a little bit now, but he's got natural power. It's a smaller ballpark, especially to right field. They call it a Demon Deacon wind that goes out there that blows out to right. And so that helps some. So it's a team that should score an awful lot of runs. 3, 4, 5, and 6. However, Tom Walter decides to mix them up between Muntz, Tinsman, Seymour, and Lanzilli are going to be extremely, extremely tough to work through.
What about the outfield? What do you like there, Larry?
Well, they've got some experienced guys out there. It looks like Ludwig will probably play right field, Lanzilli in left, and Derek Crum, who was in his second game as a freshman, made a diving catch that made the ESPN highlight reel in his first or second game of his career, is a guy that can really go get him in the gaps. An unusual thing to look for, and if you guys ever happen to see a game on TV, they've got the incline in the outfield as the warning track because it's an all-turf field. And all-turf, including the bases and the mound now, are all turf. So they've got the warning track at an angle. So you see some spectacular plays and spectacular non-plays in the outfield as well from visiting teams that come in that aren't as familiar with that incline. But good speed, good solid outfielders, experience is going to be the thing that helps them the most. Infield is extremely solid, and Michael Turconi at shortstop and Bobby Seymour, of course, over at first base are getting the most attention. But as these different publications do the different rankings, both of the catchers, Shane Muntz and Brandon Tinsman, were listed in their top 25, more probably for their offense than for their defense. But Michael Turconi was a 25th ranked player, and Bobby Seymour is a kid that should be a high draft pick as well. So experienced, great hitters, excellent power, tough lineup.
We talk about so much experience and familiarity, but who are some newcomers or maybe some guys that have been in the program that you could see emerge this season?
I think one of the guys that they're talking a lot about, whose name I keep hearing, is Pierce Bennett, who looks like he'll be playing second base. Freshman that came in and has just had some tremendous at-bats, especially the last couple of weeks. And a leadoff hitter that's willing to take a lot of pitches, that's willing to show some patience, and has great confidence in his ability to go deep into the counts against guys, not your usual freshman that comes in and is a little bit over eager. And it looks like he'll be in the leadoff spot, which puts Turconi in the number 2 spot. He's got great back control. He can move guys around. He's willing to take pitches. Excellent defensive player as well, and has been in the program a couple of years now. So he's got his feet on the ground, highly respected by his teammates as well. And then you get into 3, 4, 5, and 6. I think that Chris Ludwig is a guy that everybody forgot about a little bit, had a great freshman year, slumped a little bit as a sophomore. And then obviously last year we didn't get to see too much. So he's a guy that could be a comeback type player and have a big year out in right field. Also an excellent outfielder. He can play some center field too, if you need to move him over to there.
Larry, can you talk about we've got a few minutes left. Can you talk about the recruiting? Coach Walter, obviously being there for like 14 years. I mean, he's building a nice program. We talked about player development. Obviously, recruiting has got to be good. Plus, you throw in the factor of, you were talking earlier about academics. Wake Forest, I can promise you I would have never got in. So,
well, it's a tough thing. And especially when you're competing like you do with East Carolina, North Carolina State, there's so many great programs. And then you keep that list going all the way down to the people that want to play in the state of North Carolina. And there's a boatload of talent, but it's $75,000 a year to go to Wake Forest University. And so when you talk about breaking up a scholarship and maybe giving a kid a third of a ride, okay, well, you gave him 25. That means mom and dad got to come up with 50 someplace. And that's a little bit different outlook. So your Duke and your Boston colleges and teams like that are a little bit in the same boat, but you take a third of a ride to North Carolina and mom and dad don't have to come up with quite that big a number. So you recruit differently. They recruit more nationally. They've had some years where they only had 5 or 6 kids from the state of North Carolina on the team and had kids from all over. So you have to approach it just a little bit differently. And they don't play. They do not play games with that academic eligibility. There are no easy classes to walk into. There are no, I missed it, I'll make it up kind of situations. They bear down on the academics, and it shows in the graduation rates.
Larry, we only got about 2 minutes. We only got about 2 minutes left. I have one more quick question as we close it out. What would be considered a successful season in your opinion for Wake Forest this year? A regional or beyond that?
I think beyond that, definitely. They think that there are probably about 15 teams or so in the country that have the capability to go to Omaha. I firmly believe that they're one of them. They've got a terrific ballpark, a great venue, and easy to work with. So I think their goal would be to host a regional and then go beyond that out to Omaha.
Very excited to have you on, Larry. Yes, we're having fun and our time is running out, but definitely love to have you back to talk about Major League Baseball. If we can have you back in a few weeks to do about that, it's hard to believe Major League Baseball will be here around the corner. Certainly with the season coming up, and then obviously to talk Wake Forest baseball as well.
Love to do it, guys. You've got the phone number. Give me a shout.